And greetings, Earth Explorers. Welcome to X Squared Radio. We're coming to you live from an undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains through the America Free Radio studios on Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. This is the #1 listener-supported network in America. To support us, and I encourage you to do that, go to revolutionradio.com or freedomslips.com right there on the YouTube screen and get a regular donation. A couple bucks a month. Believe me, with 100,000 of you doing that each month, we can change the world. Got a lot of news tonight to go over and only 2 hours to do it. You can always reach me, always. You can go to the chat room on youtube.com at my YouTube, which is Brooks Agnew, and join the chat room, and I will certainly respond to that. You can also reach me at my email address, which is bagnew@x2-radio.com. bagnew@x2-radio.com. I will put it in the description down here at the bottom, and you can always respond in the messages on YouTube. Don't forget to like us tonight and turn those notifications on so you'll know when we're going to go live again. This is the voice of the revolution against the deep state, not the revolution you're seeing out there in the streets. We're the revolution against that revolution. We're a peaceful revolution of Americans and patriots. So I urge you to join us. Let me double sure. Not double speaking here. I think I'm okay with just that. Okay. Just have to make sure I'm on the right sound device. I believe I am. They'll let me know in the chat room if I'm not. Hong Kong is in the news, and this is pretty incredible. You talk about lines in the sand all the time. Prime Minister Boris Johnson pledged today to overhaul immigration rules and said Britain is considering providing a route to British citizenship for nearly 3 million Hong Kong residents in response to Beijing's move to impose a far-reaching security law here that many fear will dismantle the city's political freedoms that they've had since 1947, and which will criminalize broadly worded offenses such as, sedition or subversion, foreign interference. Beijing's decision to bypass Hong Kong's legislature has been heavily criticized by the British government, which signed an agreement in 1984 to ensure that Hong Kong remains autonomous from Beijing, except in matters such as defense. Now, the unprecedented move, which Johnson said he would implement when China formally enacts the security law, could emerge as among the most significant ramifications of Beijing's efforts to undercut Hong Kong's freedoms and bring the city more closely under Communist Party rule. You know that they kind of have this 50-year agreement, right? That's going to be one China but two systems, and they've gone about 25 years through that. But see, China's in trouble. China's in trouble financially. They need to have the liquidity. Thank you very much, Moverling5. He says, looking forward to the show. But he always makes a monetary donation, and all the donations go to equipment or financing for the North Pole Inner Earth expedition. And we appreciate that very much. And it starts things going. If you want to do that, if you look at the bottom of the chat, you'll see a little square with a $sign in it. That's known as the top chat. You can click on that, put any amount you want in there, and it'll make a nice pretty flag depending on how much you put in there, and then I will recognize and respond to your question with priority. But I want to recognize that Starlight's in there, and Patrick's in there. Eric, good to see you in there. Eric Ellert's been out there putting stuff on Twitter and Facebook. And haven't been tardy. The show starts at 8, and I got in before the break music, so it should be okay. You know that I have a schedule. One ends and the other begins, and it's a pretty tough schedule to handle on. I start my day at 4:30 in the morning today, Eastern time. way before you guys get up on the West Coast. And so good to see you, James. Nice. James Borg is in there. Very nice. Very nice. Thank you very much. And so what is going on in Hong Kong is that China needs the liquidity. They need the banks. They need the gold and the billionaires and all that that's in Hong Kong. And most of these people that are in Hong Kong, nice to see you, Rough Drop. That's very nice. Festus 8, nice to see you in there. The Hong Kong residents have the ability to do business worldwide. In other words, they can move money around. There are a lot of billionaires and sub-billionaires, multimillionaires that live in Hong Kong, and they do business all over the world, in London and Moscow and New York, and it's San Francisco. There's a lot of business that goes on there. And the issue is that China needs that liquidity. They have been really, really hurt by these trade negotiations and being forced into sign a treaty. And these tariffs, what they have done is they have made other countries more competitive with China. Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore, Morocco, places like that can now do business with countries like the United States and Great Britain. Because China is no longer the cheapest game in town. China can no longer lowball everything and price everything below market and throw a whole bunch of labor at something to create results very quickly for their customers and be competitive. Now, what's happened? Well, a couple of things have happened. First, the Chinese people, not the Chinese government, but the Chinese people have kind of benefited on a quasi-capitalist society. That is to say, they still live under a communist regime. They still don't have the freedom to get on a plane and fly to wherever, Egypt or anywhere. But they have the ability to own a business, run a business, save money, have a cell phone, build credit, borrow money, all those kinds of things that normal capitalist societies do to a certain extent, as long as they support the, quote, party. If they don't support the party, then they get a poor social score and they can't even get on a local bus. The issue is there are 1.3 billion of these people. That's 1.3 billion breakfasts every day, 1.3 billion lunches every day, 1.3 billion dinners every day, 1.3 billion physical exams once a year, jobs, lots of fuel, lots of energy, lots of space taken up. And there are social stresses that go with this because China has enforced its one-child policy. They don't allow mass migration. They build the cities. They're the ones that build the cities, and they're the ones that move the people into those cities and say, we're going to move your country to the city, and then we're going to do something else with respect to the land. Over time, what happens is these people eventually will get a vision of what things are like outside of China. They'll get a taste of the enterprise. And once you have a taste of it, you kind of want it. And people in Hong Kong really have that taste. If you go to Hong Kong, it's very upscale. There's no slums in Hong Kong. There are no homeless in Hong Kong. Everything, there are skyscrapers in Hong Kong that the building is a town. The store is there, apartments are there, where you work is there, the bank is there, hospital is there. Everything is in that one building, or at most in that one block. So you don't need to travel a lot. People in Hong Kong don't even really own cars because they don't have to. They have mass transportation, they have Uber, they have taxis, they walk. It's a different culture altogether, and it's more free enterprise because that's the way the community has been built. Well, all that changed 25 years ago when the treaty with Great Britain was put in place and China basically took over Hong Kong. That was supposed to be a 50-year transition. And we've only got about 25, 27 years through that transition, and China's saying, that's enough. That's enough. We want to make the transition now. So China's version, that is to say the CCP's version of law and order is if you speak out against the party, which fortunately there's been a lot of speaking out against the party in the street of Hong Kong. If you speak out against the party, you'll be arrested. And just like you would be in Wuhan, just like you would be in Beijing, just like you would be in Chengdu or Jiangsu City, you'd be arrested too for speaking out against the party. However, you're not going to be held locally. You're going to be extradited. You're going to be moved from Hong Kong to mainland China. Now, when you're 17 or 18 or 20, you're a college kid of a high-powered lawyer or a banker in Hong Kong, and you're being threatened with being extradited to mainland China. Guess what you're never going to see again? Hong Kong. Yeah, you're going to go somewhere with a whole bunch of other what are called dissidents, or people that don't have the right attitude, and bad things are going to happen to you. You could end up in a mine. You could end up being tortured. You could end up having your organs harvested. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. So the residents of Hong Kong, they know this. So what they've been doing over the last couple of years is they've been protesting hard against it until, COVID basically cleaned the streets there for a while. Now they're back at it. And more aggressively than ever, CCP has moved in and really applied the boot to the neck of these people. So Johnson's vow comes as the United States, Canada, Australia, and others face pressure from lawmakers and human rights groups to offer residency to Hong Kong people who are fleeing the deteriorating political circumstances in the former British colony. Now, what happens when these people leave? Well, this is, the colony was originally promised a high degree of autonomy under the terms of the 1997 handover to China. But that was 1997. Now it's 2020. Now we're, 23 years later. It's not what they expected. So Johnson wrote that his government would allow holders of British National Overseas, or BNO, passports to come to Britain for a renewable period of 12 months and gain the right to work. That's kind of a green card, so to speak, in Great Britain. And a lot of these kids speak English. They're smart. They have degrees in chemistry, finance, math. The move could place them on a route to citizenship for sure. There's no sense sending them back to Hong Kong if China is increasingly taking over the operation jurisprudence in Hong Kong, right? So these passovers, which are holdover from British rule, issued to people born before 1997, so they'd be in their mid-20s now, currently allow holders to stay in Britain for 6 months, but do not afford work rights or residency. They come as tourists. They come to study or something like that. Can't get a job, and they can't buy a home or, rent an apartment, so to speak, in London and become a Londoner. And there are about 350,000 of these Hong Kong people. So they have 7.5 million residents that hold British National Overseas passports. This is a pretty good chunk of people here. Pretty good chunk. To which people who were citizens of Hong Kong before Britain returned his city to China in 1997, they're entitled. But they're going to expand this. So you watch. This is kind of like chain migration, okay? Older siblings, younger siblings, aunts, uncles, grandparents, you get the picture. Johnson said that a further 2.5 million people are eligible to apply for these passports, adding up to about, and it's going to boggle your mind here, it's about 40%. 40% of the people who live in Hong Kong, they could leave. They could go to Great Britain. Now, Great Britain is basically the doorstep to the world, right? That's the western part of Europe, but it also gives you access to Australia. It gives access with the right credentials and the right skill sets to America. It gives you access to other parts of the world, which China does not control. So holders of those passports can visit the UK for a period of 6 months, but currently don't have the automatic country, but will, because that's what Boris is talking about changing. I don't know if you realize how important this is or not, but everybody who takes advantage of this is going to have a future. Everybody who stays behind in Hong Kong, they're going to have to put their head down. They're going to have to put basically their face in a mask, and they're going to have to enter into solitary confinement. They're going to have to say, no, 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 I want to be part of mainland China. I'm not afraid of China. I'm a Chinese person. Stay. But you know what's going to happen, right? All the people that know how to do stuff, all the people that know how to shake and move and invest and think and posture and strategize financially, they're going to leave. They're going to leave. It would be the biggest brain drain in history. 40% of the population and everything that they could generate, we're probably talking every single billionaire, and there's a bunch of them in Hong Kong. There's probably over 300 billionaires. And it's not clear exactly yet, but it's going to become more clear in the next few days, how immigration laws would be changed, or if the UK would fully open its doors to 2.8 million Hong Kong residents. You know, it's not that big a place. And if you haven't been there lately, you're in for a surprise because it's crowded. You try to drive out of London, it's not like driving out of LA. You just don't jump on the 10 or the 405 and just head on out of town. It don't work that way. London is old. I mean, like medieval old. And sure, it has asphalt roads and curbs and streetlights and traffic lights and all that stuff, but it's the same roads they had when it was all like a bunch of fiefdoms and vassaldoms, and so they're all just kind of connected together. There's no, I mean, there's the M, but you don't get to the M, you know, right there in London. You got to get off the M, and then that's the motorway, and then drive, you know, side roads to get to any place. You don't just, you know, take the freeway right up and take the freeway exit to the airport. It doesn't work that way in London. And in 20 years ago, or 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was different. It was different. You could get there. You could rent a car from Enterprise or whatever. You could get in the car, and you could very easily, you know, make yourself to the 5 or the 8 or whatever, and you can go up to Edinburgh. You go to Glasgow. It was no problem. You could go to Brighton, but it isn't that way anymore. It takes all day, 8, 9, 10 hours to get to these places. Not like it used to be. Now, if you bring 2.8 million more people, especially Chinese, as a community to London, you're really going to change the demographic of London. It's already changed because of the Muslims that are there. Everywhere you go, every bar, every hotel, every restaurant, every shop you go to is run by Muslims. Everything, every restaurant, every hotel, every behind the counter, anywhere you go is Muslims. Now they speak English, and a lot of them speak English with an English accent, you know, like Cockney or Queen's English or whatever. I haven't met any Muslim Scots. That's maybe a little too hard for just. But lots and lots of people consider themselves Londoners, and they sound like Londoners, but they're Muslims. They're Pakistanis, they're Somalis, they're, you know, Egyptians. I met them, I talked to them. They're smart, industrious people. You know how they are. They're hardworking, and they know the value of a dollar, and they're not afraid to work. They work long hours, and they invest their money well, and they work together as communities. They're industrious people. So are Chinese. I'm telling you, they are not lazy people. They're organized, they're smart, and they have money. So you know what's going to happen. They're going to make their way to London, and they're going to make their way to the surrounding communities, and then they're going to have a doorstep to go to other places. They're going to end up in Germany and France. They're going to end up in Belgium or Switzerland, and they're going to end up in New York. They're going to end up in Florida. And to tell you the truth, you could easily absorb 2.8 million more people in this country, easily, especially if these people don't come over and jump on the welfare rolls. If they come over and open a business, if they come over and put their money in the bank and, hey, let's get busy, you know, making this community better, they're going to be welcomed. I mean, just telling you, Chinese money is welcome everywhere it arrives in this country. I've seen it. Projects that were sitting there half finished. Chinese money comes in, it finishes, glass goes in, lights turn on, rent is paid, and everything is prosperous again. Believe me, it's happening. It's happening in your town, and you know it. You can see it around you. But the issue is, of course, this is not happening in China. Hong Kong people are not moving to mainland China to do these investments. And the reason is because they have a different attitude. They believe in unalienable rights. They believe in the pursuit of happiness. They believe in free speech, in freedom of peaceable assembly. You don't have that in China. So in response to the Boris Johnson op-ed, China's foreign ministry today didn't go over well, let me tell you. They said that Britain has no jurisdiction over Hong Kong. Britain must step back from the brink and stop interfering in Hong Kong's affairs and China's internal affairs. Spokesman Zhao Lijian quarters. Needless to say, China has been especially critical of the proposed thing that Bojo said. Ever since he first floated the idea last week, and they have denied that the security law breached the 1984 agreement with Britain, said it reserved the right to take unspecified, quote, corresponding action. That's sort of like saying with Taiwan, we're going to take non-peaceable action against Taiwan. That's like somebody saying, how are you today? And you say, oh, I'm not unwell. See, there's a way of, putting those words together to where you get the meaning across without actually saying it. And that's what China said. Well, we're going to use non-peaceable means. Yes, non-peaceable. Doesn't that mean like war? Yeah, it does. The UK is lobbying the Five Eyes, and I mean Five Eyes like eyeballs. This would be New Zealand, Australia, the United States, Britain, and these are the English-speaking countries that share. Well, they could share intelligence because they speak the same language and they have the same common enemy, which would be China. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're all friends because we kind of spy on each other too. And even though we share some of our intel, we don't share all of our intel, but they want all of our intel. And if all you have to do is look at the last 3 years and see how the Five Eyes have conspired with darker forces to try to overthrow our government, you'll see that it's not all milk and cookies here. Nobody trusts anybody over there. So they're lobbying the Five Eyes to allow millions of Hong Kongers to leave for Britain and also go to the U.S., Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Canada's the other U.S. speaking or English speaking of. And people are asking, analysts like myself, what does that do for the outlook? This is sort of like a coalition of open arms, okay? And as the former colonial ruler, London was a signatory to the Sino-British Joint Declaration in which China agreed to preserve Hong Kong's political freedoms and way of life, supposedly until 2047. Hello, it's just 2020. You're supposed to leave them alone till 2047. But I told you, China's hungry and they need that money, need that liquidity, because they are running short of cash. The United Kingdom warned the Chinese Communist Party, we call them the CCP, that if it continues with its decision to impose the authoritarian national security law in Hong Kong, then Britain will be forced to form an alliance with Western powers against the regime in Beijing, which is kind of exactly what we had hoped. It has long been thought, and I mean long since like 1945, 46-ish, that if the West, that would be everything from Switzerland to California, the West, had a common enemy, then we could more or less unite against a common enemy. And I mean, it would be nice if the common enemy was coming from Jupiter, but they're not. They're coming from China. And it is basically influencing all the countries, not the least of which is Australia. They're really, and South Africa and South America, with Venezuela and Argentina, and even other countries like Romania. They're feeling pressure from Chinese money. It used to be the transnational banks with the Europeans, not so much anymore. They're very dependent upon things like Russian gas and gas from the Golan Heights coming up either through Syria, through Italy. They're still worrying about that, which way it's going to go. If it goes through Italy, then it's got to go across the Mediterranean on the bottom, which is not going to be easy to do. That's a very tectonically active area. Up through Italy and straight up, through the Rhine Valley. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to go straight up through Turkey and cross Syria and go that way to Greece. Now, these are two strategically very different plans. And there's wars being fought over that and strategery going on over that as we speak, not the least of which is what's gone on since probably Afghanistan. And that's still active. In fact, just the other night, I had dinner and met an individual who served over there, was there the night that retaliation for taking out Soleimani happened. They got a little, text message that the Armenians were getting ready to splat their flight line, and we'll give you 15 minutes to get your stuff out. So they all got out of the way. I mean, they got their planes and people out of the way, and then they came over and just dug up the flight line pretty badly and splattered it pretty badly. And that woke a bunch of people up because, well, it did three things. First of all, it let the American forces know that they would retaliate. The second thing is it let them know that they could retaliate quite effectively, as a matter of fact, because we weren't really set up to protect ourselves against that. And the third thing that it let us know is we have friends over there that don't want to see American forces die. They had to do something to show their people that they were strong, but they didn't want to go to war with America, so they gave us a heads up and we got out of there. Now, since that time, we've rebuilt it and we've put some better defenses in the area, and maybe they can't do that to us again, but this is kind of interesting to learn over, a steak and a beer. Just interesting information that comes to us from time to time. So there's a foreign secretary, and his name is Dominic Raab, and that's spelled R-A-A-B. It's a pretty common name. Dominic Raab, and he told Parliament yesterday that there's time for China to reconsider. There's a moment for China to step back from the brink and respect Hong Kong's autonomy and respect China's own international obligations. Raab said that if the international security laws imposed on Hong Kong, it would violate China's own basic law, as well as ending the one country, two systems paradigm, and was agreed to in the Sino-British Joint Declaration, which guaranteed the city local autonomy for 50 years after the United Kingdom handed over the control of the former British colony in 1997. You know that did not sit very well with them. They don't like being told, hey, why don't you guys, step back from the brink and take a breath. That doesn't sit very well. There's a big ego there. The law, which, by the way, passed last week by the National People's Congress, it was a rubber stamp. It was just, a rubber stamp. The National People's Congress, I think, pretty much controls all the paper towels in that building. But it's a rubber stamp. And they're a legislative body for the Chinese Communist Party, sort of, if you have a legislative body. They basically bow their head and say yes to whatever President Xi says. But they said they will criminalize any act that the CCP considers to be a form of secession or acts against national security in Hong Kong. And that's that, folks. That is just it. You're not going to tell China what is and is not a crime in China. The law is seen, of course, by critics of the communist state as a means of clamping down on the pro-freedom protest movement in the city, to which The entire rest of the world is going, yeah, no shit. Exactly. The foreign secretary said that the United Kingdom have historic responsibilities, a duty, he would say, to the people of Hong Kong, and therefore would look for an alliance against the country with other Western nations. The government would also begin extended visa rights, blah, 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 all of that. And we're looking at about 2.8 million Hong Kongers that would take advantage of that. So anyway, following the passage of the national security law last week by the Chinese, the founder and chairman of Hong Kong Watch, which is, his name is Benedict Rogers. Here's what he said, and I'm going to quote: "Today, freedom and autonomy in Hong Kong era are dead. The Chinese Communist Party has broken its promises and killed Hong Kong. Boris Johnson must now speak out personally, robustly, and clearly, mobilize the international community to act as one and impose targeted Magnitsky sanctions," Rogers added. Hong Kong can't really say much to China. They don't have an army. They don't have a navy. They don't have an air force. They've always relied on Britain to defend them. Well, Britain can't defend them. I mean, Britain has a few boats, yeah, and they can do parades really nice. But you know who this is going to fall on? Yeah, it's going to fall on the U.S. And it's not like the U.S. doesn't have its hands full right now, right? We're dealing with our own Chinese issues. We dealt with, along with the rest of the world, the CCP virus. And the reason we're dealing with that is we believe, either by accident or on purpose, the virus was bioengineered and leaked into the public sector. And then individuals that were infected with that virus were moved to the United States with the express purpose of infecting people in the United States. And then, effective or not effective, it's the thought that counts with this kind of stuff. The thought was, hey, we'll kill off 300 million Americans and we'll take over America for our people. I already read you that position paper last week here. I'm not going to go over it again because I only have 2 hours, but we already know where their thought process is. We know where their motivation is, and we know where their planning has been. Now, they haven't been able to execute, but the planning is there. Thought is there. So, and by the way, Andy, thank you very much. That Brooks, love your shows, but my schedule doesn't allow me to even watch you live, or ever watch you live. I spend the week at work getting caught up on the 5 hours of super high quality info you give us each week. So do I. I spend all week long putting together this kick-ass content so I can come on here for 2 hours on Revolution Radio and do my best to try to bring this information to you in a, concise and intelligent and exciting way so that you'll assimilate it and become informed by it and thus be able to know where to stand, in the way or out of the way, your choice, but at least give you the truth, at least give you the facts so you know what to do. So while you're spending your time working and then catching up on this as a recording on YouTube, I'm spending my week putting the content together so I can put it on YouTube Live. So we're both doing the same thing, Andy, so it's okay. We're both supporting the same cause, and I very, very much appreciate you. And Festus, thank you as well. Yes. I appreciate both of you. Yes, William, I do. I appreciate you. Thanks so much out there. I don't mean to ignore you, but you know how it goes. I just got to spread the love out a little bit here. Boo, what would I do without you? By the way, you'll notice in the chat room, Moverling5, Rob, Plotnik, and Boo are blue wrenches, and that gives them the ability, guys, on the straight and narrow, so we don't get any trolls in there. Lord knows there's enough trolls out there. So I appreciate the love. And Mona, by the way, thank you very much for the donation this week. That was very heartfelt, and I super appreciate it. Thank you very much. So we know there are riots going on. Yes, there are protests, but let's dig a little deeper on this, and we'll get to some more details on this that will enlighten you as to what's going to happen in the next few hours and the next few days. The riots in the United States, and we see how local governments are reacting. And then in Hong Kong, we have these similar riots. We have similar people being arrested, being booted, being hauled out, and a lot of these are students, a lot of these are activists, and they're waving the American flag and they're singing the national anthem, the American national anthem, and they're all about peace, justice, and the American way. But for some countries that have had a high-profile response and claimed they will take action, I can only describe them as upholding double standards. They value very much their own national security, but they're biased in viewing ours. On Monday, that's a couple days ago, the Hong Kong police announced that the city would be banning the annual vigil held for victims of the Tiananmen Square massacre for the first time in over 30 years. Yeah. And you should go back, and if you don't know what that is, go back and look it up. I'm not going to give you that history lesson because it was bloody. The authorities claimed that the ban was a result of the Wuhan coronavirus, but we all know that's a bunch of crap. Many believe the move was made to appease the communist government in Beijing. For sure, that is what we think. And it's the same thing in the movies, it's the same thing on radio, same thing on talk radio, same thing on investment. All these things are done in the universities to appease or to please the communist Chinese government. Now, Cherie Geo, who is the wife of Chris Geo, who's the founder of Truth Frequency Radio Network, another network out there that does very well, by the way, on the TalkStream Live banners, made an interesting observation today. I thought I want to share this. It says, food for thought. The last time Saturn was in Aquarius was during the Rodney King riots. The last time Pluto was in Capricorn was during the American Revolution. Neptune was in Pisces. Rome fell. And guess what? We have all three right now. Pretty powerful forces, all focused at one time in the universe on this planet. So what is going on? What are we really seeing here? I'm going to try to put some pieces together for you in the next 90 minutes that maybe you forgot about, or maybe you heard and you didn't know where the bolt went in the machine. So I'm going to try to build the machine for you in the next 15 minutes of this hour and the next hour, so that you will understand what you are looking at when you look at the news, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. Just like, the last 3.5 months, every single time you look at that TV screen, and I don't really care what channel you look at, except maybe Nickelodeon, and even that got pretty freaking weird today. What was it? 8 minutes and 46 seconds with I Can't Breathe on a black screen on Nickelodeon. That's really going to get through to some kids, I can tell you that. I can tell you right now, people tuned away from that channel by the millions today. All you've seen at the bottom of your screen is dangerous or deadly coronavirus pandemic. That's all you've seen at the bottom of the screen. And it's like burned into your retina, right? It's burned into your cornea. What is that, Mona? Brooks, have you covered anything on retired St. Louis police captain who was murdered last night trying to guard the jewelry store pawn shop of a friend? I haven't covered it yet. This was an execution style killing. There were 5 of them, actually. This was a off-duty or a retired captain that was trying to protect the jewelry store from being looted. It was a pawn shop of his friend. Never saw it coming. Somebody walked up behind him and shot him in the back of the head and killed him. That is not a protest, people. That is an execution. That is an execution. Now, that's not acceptable, but you know exactly what's going on. I'm going to paint it for you right now so you know what's going on. Wes, thank you very much. What's your comment? I like your donation. It's wonderful. You can put some words in there, Wes, like hey, you're spot on, or take a step back and take another shot of scotch. I don't know. Give me some advice, Wes. I'm happy to see you. I promise. Yes, reality is stranger than fiction these days. Good point, Ruff. Good point. Anybody know what the OFA is? Hooverling says, keep going, Brooks. Amazing stuff. Okay. The OFA is an organization, a 501c4. I know you know what a 501c3 is. That's a nonprofit like, a church or, somebody that's going to pick up trash along the highway or help kids homeschool or, nonprofits. You're not allowed to lobby. You don't really, and all your donors have to be revealed. So you have to report that every single year, like who's donating money to you. But a 501c4, you don't. A 501c4, you don't have to reveal who your donors are. And I don't even know why these organizations exist, these nonprofits. They're tax deductible, but that's not the point. The point is you get half a dozen to a dozen big investors. Each one's putting in, let's say, $5 million, which is doable for somebody that's making $50 million a year. They're going to pay some hellacious taxes, so you might as well give a big donation like that, right? So they do. But you have to understand, when the OFA was put together, the Organization for Action, or Organizing for Action. Thank you, Boo. Wow, that's very nice. I love all these matching funds. We do this about 500 more times. We'll really be able to do something on this North Pole Inner Earth expedition. Chairman Messina, who was Obama's 2012 campaign manager, and First Lady Michelle Obama, announced the formation of OFA, Organizing for Action. And guess when it was? It was January 18th, 2013. What do you think else happened in January of 2013? That's right. Inauguration. Obama's inauguration, second term. Exactly right. White House official John Carson also left the Obama administration to become the executive director. Campaign senior advisor David Axelrod. You remember him, don't you? Black hair, mustache, David Axelrod. He served as a consultant. Now, this is what they said. This is what Obama said about 6 months before this organization. About 5 years before this organization was formed. It was during his campaign for president, the first term, in July 2nd of 2008, right before Independence Day. And I quote, "We cannot continue to rely on our military in order to achieve the national security objectives we've set. We've got to have a civilian national security force that's just as powerful, just as strong, just as well-funded." Close quote. That was the foundation of the OFA. Now, Organizing for Action succeeds Organizing for America, which was formed under similar circumstances but operated under the control of the Democrat National Committee. It's a big group being taken over by a very few. In preparation for President Obama's second term, Organizing for America was relaunched as a nonprofit group in order to mobilize support behind the president's legislative and political, and this is a key word here, agenda. They had an agenda that they wanted to put forward. So Organizing for America was reorganized as Organizing for Action. The organization, of course, is headquartered in Chicago, the center of crime in the United States, the center of street violence in the United States, the center of corruption in the United States. As a tax-exempt 501c4, they harness the energy of the president's re-election campaign, and they don't have to say who their donors are. The group advocates on policy issues such as gun violence prevention, climate change, and, of course, the alphabet people. Those are the LGBTQM, add all the letters you want there. And, of course, immigration. These are all important issues. And they all had huge impact from 2016 to 2020. As soon as Obama was out of office, major money. Ever hear of an organization called Pueblos Sin Fronteras? You know what that means? Countries without borders. Yes. It is an organization that is founded with the purpose of motivating people to mass migrate from the countries of Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador to America. And I don't mean migrate like become citizens. I mean mass migration. So powerful and so effective was this organization that over 1 million people dropped everything they had, took the clothes on their back and their cell phone, and they walked 1,200 miles. They walked on foot all the way from their countries, all the way through Mexico, and smashed themselves against the southern border. Many of them made it across, and they were apprehended. Some were sent back, some were claimed asylum, and you know what I'm saying. It created a massive humanitarian crisis. So my question to you in the chat room is, who is it that had the power and the money to make that happen? You know the name of the person that made that happen? It's a single person. A single person funded Pueblos Sin Fronteras. A single person organized the marketing campaign, organized the buses, provided the snacks along the way, did the marketing campaign in their language in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Yucatan, and Honduras, and got those people to walk all the way to America on foot, honestly believing that they could just walk across. Of course, they'd have to pay the cartels, because the cartels are kind of like they own the rights of passage. Every 100 feet or so, there's a different cartel member that controls that little section of the ford across the Rio Grande. You know who the individual was? I'm not seeing it. It was none other than Michael Bloomberg. Yeah, Michael Bloomberg, the presidential candidate. Michael Bloomberg from Bloomberg News. Michael Bloomberg, one of the richest men in the world. He's the guy that organized that humanitarian crisis. He's the one that paid for it. And then he ran for president, criticizing President Trump for that crisis that he created. Now, that's brilliant. That's absolutely freaking brilliant. And it's all part of organizing for action. All part of the immigration agenda. Did those people make it into the United States? Nope. They're still stuck in tent cities on the Mexican side of the border, and the wall's going up every single day. About 100 miles a month now. 100 miles a month. You know what's going to happen at the end of 24 months? That whole thing's going to be built. Done. Very quietly. Steel and concrete, American steel, American concrete going up every single day. And you know what's going to happen? The border's going to become impregnable. So in February of 2013, this is after Obama's inauguration, the New York Times reported that donors contributing or raising $500,000 or more to Organizing for Action would put them on the group's National Advisory Board, granting the privilege of attending quarterly update meetings given by the President, Obama. Wow, Moverling, you are freaking amazing. Brooks, this is on behalf of those who aren't able to donate to you in these incredibly difficult times. I thank everyone for you being here. You're a great American. I am so humbled by donations. It's $50 for those of you that are listening by audio on the Revolution Radio Network on freedomslips.com. That's an incredible donation. I really, really appreciate it. And it's a kind of a regular thing for him. So I'm humbled to the dust. Thank you so much. And you all in the chat room should be thanking him too, because he's doing it vicariously for you. And I appreciate that. So this Organizing for Action is going to put them on the group of an advisory board. Now, what does an advisory board do? Let's see. Oh, we're going to have a board meeting once a year. Yes, of course, there'll be great food and great wine at this thing, and you can wear a tux if you want to. Oh, and by the way, press is not invited. And we're going to discuss very high-level things. What are we going to do for America? A little bit like a little mini, what do you call that group that meets the Bilderbergs? A little mini Bilderbergs, except we don't want to mess with all those Europeans. Let's just have Obama. We want to hear him. What's your plan? Well, you're watching it. You're watching it. This is his plan. What you're seeing on TV every single night in Chicago and in Philadelphia and in Santa Monica and in New Jersey and New York, you're watching the plan. That's their plan. The president was being sold, stating that the OFA was an independent organization and referred specific questions to the OFA staff. On March 8th, Messina, who I told you used to work in the Obama administration, he told CBS News that the president might attend a founders summit, but stated, whether you're a volunteer or a donor, we can't and we won't guarantee access to any government officials. But just as the president and administration officials deliver updates on the legislative process to Americans and organizations across the ideological spectrum, there may be occasions, not promising anything, there may be occasions when members of the Organizing for Action are included in those updates. No promises, but, just in case you wanted to make some stock investments or strategic moves in the financial markets or bond markets, just in case. It could be valuable information. These are not opportunities to lobby. We don't need any money. They are briefings on the positions the president has taken and the status seeing them through. Questions have been raised about the aims and the eligibility of Organizing for Action to continue to maintain the BarackObama.com website and also control the Barack Obama Twitter account. Use of these accounts by Organizing for America is not prevented by campaign finance laws. So we took the liberty of going there today as we went to the website and we checked it out. So I'm going to just run this little slideshow for you on YouTube. You can see it there. This is what the OFA is all about. I'm just going to run these for you. Yes, just a little bit of information for you so that you can be watching that and know who's involved, who the big donors are. And we won't say any names because we don't want to get shadow banned here on this organization, but we're going to give you some information there. We'll take a quick break now for about 4 minutes while the network takes a few recognized profit center breaks. And then we'll be back after this. And I want to talk to you about the President's Central Command Center that's being set up. That's President Trump's Central Command Center. And what this means for you, what it means for America, and what high-level actions are being taken right now behind the scenes, because we're in the middle of what we were in the middle of a soft coup we talked about last week. Now, as it's a prelude to war, we've moved into a hard coup. That is to say, serious street-level actions with baseball bats and explosives and bricks are being taken to overthrow the government of the United States. We'll be right back after this. Don't go away. More X Squared Radio coming to you right after this.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here, Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
Narco-syndicalist commune. We take it in turns to act as a sort of executive officer for the week. Yes. But all the decisions of that officer have to be ratified at a special bi-weekly meeting. Yes, I see. By a simple majority in the case of purely internal affairs. Be quiet. But by a 2/3 majority in the case of more... Be quiet. I order you to be quiet. Look, you stupid bastard, you've got no arms left. Yes, I have. Look! It's just a flesh wound.
I don't believe I've seen such a display of courage, skill, nerve, grace, and stupidity.
I'll do you for that. Oh, what? Come here. What are you going to do, bleed on me? I'm invincible. You're a loony. The Black Knight always triumphs.
Roundtable Live, Monday through Friday, 1 a.m. till 4 a.m. Eastern Time. Bring your mind, bring your ideas, bring your voice. King Arthur had nothing on us here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We've got to stop them! They're going to kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it.
Right, you tell them I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio.
All right, we're back.
All right, thanks for listening while we take that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
Thank you so much for being part of America Free Radio here on the Revolution Radio Network. And by the way, I had a special request. I think it was Moverling that said, Luke, I am your father. I'm just kidding. He wanted me to do that with the sound effect. But we're here on freedomslips.com, freedomslips.com. Please go there, make donations, help keep the studio alive. You can always be part of us. Listening on by the phone or at the Studio A at freedomslips.com or revolutionradio.com, or you can listen on YouTube Live. We have an active chat room in there, and I will respond to your chats in there. Thank you so much, Piper, for the question. You said, what are your thoughts about the restaurant where George Floyd and Derek Chauvin worked? And she mentioned something about the counterfeiting. As it turns out, and we knew this early on, we didn't want to really break the story because we were still trying to validate some facts. Some of these things, though, come through unvalidated sources, no matter how legitimate they sound. We try to get our facts straight here because we do get fact checked all the time. But one of the things that came across is that Derek and George knew each other because they worked at the same nightclub. And now we know that this is true. George worked on the inside of the club and Derek worked on the outside of the club as security. And we're pretty sure that they worked together, even though overlapping shifts or overlapping responsibilities, for at least a year, maybe longer. I can tell you right now that if you work a place for a year in a small staff of 12 people, you're going to get to know your coworkers. So they were familiar with one another. Other facts that we know is that Derek Chauvin, excuse me while I take a sip of this water. Derek Chauvin, as an off-duty policeman, worked there as security. And he was married to an Asian woman who evidently had done quite well with beauty pageants. So she was, I guess, quite attractive. The other thing that we know is that Derek's neighbors, people that saw him come out and go to work every day, all the years he was on the force, they did not know he was a cop. Now, I don't know if you have any cops that work in your neighborhood or live in your neighborhood. I do. And when I drive out in the morning, I see his cruiser there in his driveway. We have a state trooper in our neighborhood as well. So I know they're cops. Everybody in the neighborhood knows they're cops, and we feel good about it. Having a policeman live in our community it helps us, feel like we're safe. But nobody knew Derek was a cop. Now, he wasn't a detective. Obviously, he was a beat cop in a uniform, messing with the bad guys, the drug guys, and the. As it turns out, Mr. George was not quite the upstanding citizen that, normal, everyday, red-blooded Americans are. His autopsy, he had fentanyl in his system. He had methamphetamines in his system. So this is a guy that was going sideways on the drugs. This will play with your heart big time and weaken you physically. But also, Mr. George happened to be active making movies, and these weren't family movies, these were pornographic movies. And maybe even some of these movies Mr. George performed, and not by himself, with females. And one of the females, turns out, may have been either attempts to recruit her or actually recruit her, was none other than Mr. Derek's wife. Yeah, the former pageant winner, or competitor anyway. And to make things even more saucy and kind of interesting, I guess, from a news perspective, is that one of the 4 cops that was involved in this incident, the Asian gentleman, happened to be the brother of his wife. So his wife may have been involved, his brother-in-law is involved, and George is underneath Derek's knee on the pavement for 8 minutes, 46 seconds. You see, can you draw conclusions from this? Well, I tell you, you can draw this conclusion, Piper. Wasn't a coincidence. George wasn't a stranger, and George wasn't a saint. Oh, one other thing. The reason that George was arrested in the first place wasn't for making pornographic movies. It was for passing counterfeit money. He was passing counterfeit money, and he got caught. And they reported, called the police, and the police came, and Mr. George was a little showing the effects of his drug use, got a little belligerent, 6'7", and one thing led to another. And now, of the 400 people a month that are killed every single month by cops in America, this one happened to be black, and the cop happened to be white, and it was filmed, and it was just exactly what the doctor ordered to get impeachment show season 6 underway. Oh, yes. And let's be sure about this. Absolutely sure, positive, 100%. George Floyd did not deserve to die. Okay? He was resisting arrest. So what? You don't put your knee on somebody that long and kill him. Okay? So Derek's going to go to prison. He may commit suicide before he even goes to prison. And the other cops are probably going to be arrested too as accessories for not stopping this cop from doing it. And there were more strange things too, like EMTs not showing up. These were people with body armor on and wearing guns and boots and khakis. That's not an EMT. That's who picked up George Floyd. I don't know. A lot of inconsistencies, and we're not going to be able to get to the bottom of it because it's all going to get washed away. But the point is that 400 people a month killed by cops is too many. And by the way, I don't care what you say about ratios and demographics and all that. Over half of those 400 people killed each month are white. And 70% of those 400 people that are killed by black cops. So let's just get all the numbers out in the open and make sure we're dealing with facts here. Yes, black people only make up 12% of the society, so they shouldn't make up 105, 106 of those deaths every single month, but they do. And it's that way. It's consistent every single month. But you know what? That 102, 104, 105 black people that are killed every single month by cops, it pales in comparison. Less than half the number of people that are killed in the city of Chicago by other blacks. It's a crazy phenomenon no one wants to talk about because it doesn't fit the narrative. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on, because obviously our prime time is taken up with other things. A lot of you just want to stop watching TV. You just want to go watch Netflix. You want to go watch Amazon. You want to go watch Disney Plus. Anything but TV. I mean, holy crap, you can't even watch sports now because all the sports are shut down. Nobody wants to see it. Unless it comes to your neighborhood, it doesn't affect you, right? Yeah, well, guess what? President Trump's cabinet has prepared a central command center. You don't do this when you're going to make a Girl Scout cookie campaign. This is for coordinating federal responses to the rioting, not the protesting. Protesting is fine. That's an American thing. We do it all the time. Women's marches, gay marches. We have all kinds of marches. We're a country of marches. March, march, march. It's wonderful. It's great. We ride bikes, we march, we walk, we wheelchair, we do all kinds of stuff. But we don't loot and burn. That is not American, okay? So White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany, isn't she awesome? Like 4 thumbs up, just best ever. She announced on Monday that Attorney General Bill Barr and Defense Secretary Mark Esper, this is Defense Secretary now. We're not talking about the National Guard. We're talking about, 101st Airborne. Yeah, we're talking about tanks and planes and Navy. This is that secretary, okay? They're going to be involved in sending federal assets. That's a very antiseptic way of saying federal troops. I know you're saying, but wait, what about posse comitatus? I'm getting to that. Just let me set it up for you, okay? Because Andrew Wilkow wasn't on the air this morning. Things were going on in New Jersey, and he wasn't in the studio this morning, so you're not going to get this today. Listen closely. He had 2 briefings with Secretary Esper and General Barr and General Milley. And There will be additional federal assets deployed across the nation. You've seen a lot of the equipment already moved around on trains and trucks. And come on, you've been seeing it. You've been reporting it to me for months and months and months. Hey, Brooks, I see these half tracks going here. I see these 20 millimeter cannon trucks going here and there. You know what, guys? We've been building it for 3 years, right? We've spent over $2 trillion rebuilding our military. Where do you think that stuff's going to go? You think it's going to sit out there in trucks R Us in Arizona or wherever that's built? No, they're going to deploy it all over the country because we're putting ourselves on a war footing, a defensive war footing, not offensive. Those are the good guys, okay? Additional federal assets across the nation. There will be a central command center in conjunction with the state and local governments that will include General Milley, Secretary Esper, and General Barr. He's not going to go any further in announcing what actions they're going to take. That's Trump. Other presidents, they lay the whole thing out for you. 2 weeks from now, we're going to drop the 101st Airborne in on Boston, and they'd lay the whole thing out for you. And then you know what would happen. CNN would be there with their cameras. Hey, we're waiting for the C-130s to come in over Logan. Everything would be set up. That's not Trump's way. Trump doesn't do that. He doesn't broadcast. He takes action. He doesn't broadcast what he's going to do. He doesn't give the enemy a heads up. Now, McEnany indicated the Trump cabinet has observed that police lines meant to accompany peaceful protests being overwhelmed by mass protests that have turned into riots. Now, there's a couple of fine lines here. When you get to move federal assets out, there are certain things that have to take place first because we have this thing in our Constitution. It's called posse comitatus. They put it in place early because they could see what was going on in the early colonies. You remember when British troops were deployed all over the place and they had standoffs and different skirmishes with colonialists, and eventually, it didn't take long, some people wearing red coats ended up dead in the middle of the street, and then it was game on, right? So we don't do that in this country. We have National Guard, we have police, we have sheriffs, everything scales down to the local level. But federal troops are meant for use outside the United States. That's posse comitatus. The only time it's been violated, really, is when a certain thing called the Insurrection Act is put into place. Now, this has been in place since 1800 and something, 1802 or 5 or something. It's been in place for a long, long time. And the Insurrection Act has a couple of conditions that have to be met before it can be invoked. The first one can be when a governor says, hey, too much going on in my state. My local cops can't take care of it. I'm not going to, get the National Guard involved because I can't get them motivated soon enough. We need some federal assistance. President can invoke the Insurrection Act and in come federal troops, and instantly all the streets are shut down, all the curfew goes into place, all the looting stops. I'll give you some examples. There were race riots in the 30s, race riots in the 50s, race riots in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. There was Hurricane Katrina. All this is when the Insurrection Act was put into place to stop violence quickly with professional troops. The other thing that can be put in place, and has not been put in place very often, is something called the Proclamation to Disperse. Now, the way the laws are set up, the president has to issue an official proclamation. Proclamations are very serious documents. They're not like executive orders. They're not like executive memorandum. It's a proclamation. It sounds very colonial, but it's official. When that proclamation is put forward, it is a proclamation to disperse. It's a presidential order. And the presidential order is to the public to disperse. Go home. Go home. This is over. It's out of control. We're going to bring federal troops in if you don't stop this. And if another brick goes through another window, the president can put the Insurrection Act into place. And when that happens, a lot of you would call that martial law. it is effectively martial law, because what would happen is the real military with the real body armor and the real armor would show up on the streets, and that's that. All the businesses that are getting firebombed and bricked and people getting shot and all this stuff, it all goes away. Everything goes back to peace and tranquility, joy and happiness by force. Now, in some respects, this is exactly what the OFA wants. This is exactly what their two armies, they have two armies that operate inside the United States. One of them is called Antifa, which is a more, they move as a black bloc. They cover their faces. They move as one. They do violence, and almost strictly violence. And they're instigators, agitators, and they're well-trained. And there are over 52,000 of them out there. That's a big group to be professionally paid to do this. And the other one is called Black Lives Matter. Now, Black Lives Matter Black lives do matter. And there are many people in Black Lives Matter that feel very passionate about it, especially black people. But the leadership of Black Lives Matter has hijacked the organization, and you've already seen it with your own eyes. You've seen it since it was first formed, since Ferguson. You have seen it, right? You've seen the results. Cars turned over, people beat up, mass clubbings, kickings. We've had, a dozen deaths in the last 3 days. Not knifings, not shootings. People beat to death with their bare hands. This is violent, people. Antifa doesn't do this. They're a bunch of pussies. They throw bricks. They swing shovels. They set fires. They do the cowardly stuff. Black Lives Matter? These are mobs of violent people. They are so angry. I mean, they scream. You hear some of these people on YouTube, they become overnight stars. And out-of-work actors and actresses, they're donating money and making speeches and all that. It's a big competition to see who can rage more than the other person. It's serious stuff. It's serious stuff. But it all plays into a bigger picture. And that bigger picture has one goal and one goal only, and that is to overthrow the government of the United States. And that's why this Central Command has been put in place. But they're not the only ones. They're not the only ones. There's another Central Command. Yep. Former President Barack Hussein Obama, tonight, while we were on the air at an earlier network, he had a national town hall on his website. Yep, a virtual town hall event with, young people. Got to be young people, right? Couldn't be old people like me. It's got to be young people because, they got more to risk. And aides said Obama will call for turning the protest over Floyd's death into policy change, and will urge specific reforms to ensure safer policing and increased trust between communities and law enforcement. Wait a minute. Let me go back. 2008. I think I still have it. Yep. We cannot continue to rely on our military in order to achieve the national security objectives we've set. We've got to have a civilian national security force that's just as powerful, just as strong, and just as well-funded. Yep, and we're going to use the same flag that we've been using for over 80 years. Yep, that's what we're going to do. We're in a political season, he said. Our country's also at an inflection point. That's Valerie Jarrett. You remember her, don't you? She's the one that created the Obamas. She put the Obamas together. She funded them. She got them through school. She got them elected. She lives with them. She's the Muslim Brotherhood woman. You know who I'm talking about, don't you? I can't say anything else about her because, it got Roseanne Barr in trouble, so I'm not going to risk it. But President Obama is not going to shy away from that dialogue simply because he's not in office anymore. That's just a temporary situation. Obama was already beginning to emerge from political hibernation to endorse Joe Biden's Democrat presidential bid, but that's before Joe put a butt plug in his face and covered it with a mask. He's not talking. They're not going to let him talk. And I got $100 here. I'll bet you anybody in the chat room $100 that Joe Biden is not the nominee. Not going to get 50% of the delegates. It ain't going to happen. That convention in Milwaukee, it's going to be brokered. And oh man, what I wouldn't give to have a ticket to that thing. Wouldn't that be great? Sit up in the top, in the back, and pretend, maybe pretend to be a Democrat. Maybe I'd wear a pink shirt or something, sit there and mind my own business. Oh, it would be so entertaining. There'd be so much stripper glitter falling out of the ceiling you cannot imagine. All those leftover balloons from Hillary's presidential run, wow, it would be incredible. So he's addressing graduates of historically black colleges and universities last month. Obama said the pandemic had finally torn back the curtain on the idea that so many of the folks in charge know what they're doing. Like they don't know what they're doing. And it's hard to know what you're doing when you have a international organization that's creating bioweapons and dumping it on your shores. The Floyd death, however, has drawn a more visceral and personal reaction from the nation's first black president. Floyd, a black man, died after a white police officer pressed his knee into Floyd's neck for several minutes, even after he stopped moving and pleading for air. In a lengthy written statement last week, Obama said that if he had a son, it would look... No, that was another black person. Hold on a second. Obama said that while he understood that millions of Americans were eager to get back to normal when the pandemic abates, it shouldn't be forgotten that normal life for people of color in the U.S. involves being treated differently on account of their race. I mean, why would he ever let you forget that? He wouldn't. And I said, Obama's going to make a statement. My friend said, oh, no, he wouldn't dare. Too much of a powder keg out there. I said, are you kidding? Barack Obama has an ego the size of California. This is made for him. He created this tinderbox. You think he's going to let this microphone slip away from him? Like hell. I guarantee you Barack Obama will talk. That's exactly what he did tonight. It was virtual, because I don't think there was any place around the country that was going to let him have a real town hall at a real place. It had to be virtual because, after all, we got to practice social distancing, right? It's not like we're protesters or anything where we can ignore that. Obama grappled with police brutality against minorities as president, including in Ferguson, Missouri, where clashes broke out after the death of Michael Brown, a black 18-year-old. After Brown's death, Obama's Justice Department moved to enact broad policing reforms, though most were halted under the Trump administration. Yeah, it's true. By the way, I run this little slideshow in there so that you can see what was going on at the time. A lot of Antifa flags, a lot of hands up, don't shoot. And by the way, there's a website out there where you can buy all this stuff. I was wondering, how in the world was I seeing photographs from 16 different cities around the country, from Texas, from Austin, Texas, all the way to Seattle, 16 cities. I saw the same mask on people, the same black mask. And on the mask was a white fist being held up like this. And it said, "I can't breathe," across the front of it. Like, that just happened. It just happened a few days ago, right? That's what this whole explosion is about across the country. And already the website, which is sponsored by Obama, the Black Lives Matter website, you could buy these masks. And guess what? They're $9 a piece. Who in the world paid to distribute all these masks to 16 different cities so they would show up on the national news cameras? It sounds like a pretty organized effort to me. So, what happens to people that incite to riot? What happens to people that get involved? There are a lot of people who fall through the cracks, but there's a lot of people who fall right smack in front of the crosshairs thing. And, you know what? It isn't the founders. It isn't the organizers. The people who start these riots, they're rarely the people who finish them. Rarely. So a left-winger who allegedly incited multiple riots during protests Saturday in Pittsburgh happens to be an Amazon employee. Imagine that. His name is Brian Bartels. Now, Brian Bartels, he's just 20. He's just 20. He's in between a teeny bopper and drinking age. You remember 20, don't you? Were you smart when you were 20? I wasn't. I did a lot of here, hold my beer, watch this stuff when I was 20. This guy did too, but he's been doing it for a while. He's accused, this is serious stuff. He's accused of starting violent riots in Pittsburgh during a Saturday demonstration, and he turned himself into police a couple days ago, escorted by his parents. Now, the video appears to show Bartels breaking windows of a police cruiser as a peaceful protester. He was wearing all black with a black bandana around his face during the protest, according to the video. And Bartels faces charges of vandalism, rioting, and criminal mischief. He also used a red or orange spray paint to damage a police vehicle Saturday afternoon. Used something to break a police car window and encouraged others to do the same before disappearing into the crowd. I got a picture of him here. I'm going to leave it in my notes. Maybe you guys can access it. Good-looking kid. I mean, he's got a good haircut. He looks like he's well-fed. He's got new clothes on. He's got his little Antifa, bandana around his face. His parents, his mom and dad, both parents living at home. Got a mom, got a dad, lives in a middle-class house. They escorted him to the police station as he turned himself in. An anonymous tip from a coworker at Amazon identified him as one of the culprits. And so they went, and they said, you better come down and turn yourself in, or we're going to come get you, and it won't be good. So police said an anonymous tip turned him on to this guy. The Antifa kid who police say incited the riot in Pittsburgh has been arrested. And mommy and daddy are not very happy. Not very happy at all. Police conducted a search warrant of his home. And guess what they discovered? He's 20. He's 20. They discovered guns, spray paint, gloves, as well as a sweatshirt matching the one seen in the video of the protest. Neighbors said they hardly ever saw Bartels and that his house was typically empty, according to local media reports. Sounds like a latchkey kid to me. The Trump administration and conservatives believe that the riots are the handiwork of Antifa, and I think they're right. In a related case, there's another individual. His name is Matthew Lee Rupert. He was arrested in Chicago. That's important. He was arrested in Chicago Sunday, after he traveled to Minneapolis. That's no small jaunt there. Last week was several explosive devices, which federal agents say he passed out to other protesters there. Remember I told you about the pipe bombs? People are making them. And some of them are professional, some of them are amateur, but all the directions are part of the OFA, the Organizing for Action. They have these training meetings. And I guarantee the FBI has infiltrated these training meetings, and they've infiltrated Antifa. They know who these people are. They know who the organizers are. They know where their money is. They know how they're paid, and they're going to make their move. That's why this central command center has been put in place. But I'm not giving away anything yet. I'll let you know when it happens. You just keep those creative juices flowing. But Friday, Mr. Rupert, Mr. Matthew Lee Rupert, he lives in Galesburg, by the way. He posted a cell phone video on his Facebook account that indicated he was in Minneapolis. He wasn't in Chicago. In the video, he is passing out explosive devices and encouraging people to light a building on fire and looting businesses. He is 28. He's 28. I was pretty smart by the time I was 28. Yep, I was a dad. I was working full-time, going to school full-time. Yeah, I had it together finally when I was 28. I managed to get there with all my teeth and no broken bones and yeah. But Mr. Rupert is 28, man. 28. He's charged with civil disorder, carrying on a riot, and possession of unregistered destructive devices like explosives. That's the BATFE, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. According to the complaint, in one video, Rupert said, quote, "They got SWAT trucks up there. I've got some bombs if you all want to go throw them back. Bomb them back. Here, I got some more. Light it and throw it." Close quote. Dumb move, Mr. Rupert, because you're going to be spending 20 years. You're not going to get out of prison until you're almost 50 years old. If you're thinking about this, you're thinking about strapping on that sexy Antifa bandana. You're thinking about, getting that black fleece hoodie and black jeans and black tennis shoes, and you're going to wear black gloves, and you're going to go out there and be part of the black bloc, and you're going to set things right. You're going to be part of something greater than yourself. You're going to go to prison because you know what's going to happen. I'll tell you, if you're listening, if you know anyone that's thinking about this, they're going to bring the troops, and they're going to be 12 deep. You're not escaping. And they're going to close in on you if they have to start from the outside of the city and work their way in until they got you completely surrounded. And here's what's going to happen. Your hands are going to be zip-tied together behind your back. Your mask is going to be pulled down. You're going to be photographed. You're going to have a DNA sample taken of you. Your cell phone and your identification is going to be taken from you. And all that information is going to be cataloged. And then you're going to be escorted onto a bus. And those zip ties are going to be chained to the floor, along with a whole bunch of other people wearing black just like you. And then that bus is heading out of town. It's not going to the jail. It's not going to the prison. That bus is going all the way to maybe Arizona or New Mexico. You're going to get off that bus inside of a gated area, a fenced-in area, maybe 2,000 acres. You're going to be shaved. You're going to be processed. You're going to be deloused, take a shower. You're going to go to bed. And in about a month, you're going to be arraigned. And you're going to have to enter a plea, guilty or not guilty. By then, they're going to know. If you're a peaceful protester or you're a violent offender. Because they've been tracking you for a long time. They know what you've been doing. They're going to check your Facebook. They're going to check your Twitter, your Snapchat. They're going to know you by the time that's done. And they're going to let you go if you're a peaceful protester. But it's going to be the worst 28 days of your life. You're never going to come back. The rest of you, 500, 5,000, 50,000 of you, all 52,000 of you Antifa fools, you're going to be in prison for the rest of your life. Because we're not talking about a violation of civil law. We're talking about insurrection. Insurrection against the United States of America. That puts you in the category of an enemy combatant. Now I'm going to share with you a story of two adults, if I got the time. Do I have the time? What is it? Yes, I got the time. Two adults. We're not talking about kids now. Not 20, not 28. Two attorneys. And they're high-powered attorneys, successful. They were busted, and they were throwing Molotov cocktails through a police car window in Brooklyn on Saturday. Brooklyn Community Board member Colin Ford Mattis, he is 32 years old, and his alleged accomplice, 31-year-old Yurak Rahman, were driving around in a tan minivan near a clash between police and demonstrators at 88th Precinct Station House in Fort Greene. Federal prosecutors for the Eastern District of New York said in a detention memo on Monday. A bystander snapped a photo of them while they were in their car, and they were allegedly trying to pass out the homemade explosive devices in Bud Light bottles. Rahman attempted to distribute Molotov cocktails to the witness, and others so that those individuals could likewise use incendiary devices in furtherance of more destruction and violence. The two were busted by cops after Mattis, who was in the driver's seat, pulled the van over near the precinct, and Rahman allegedly got out and tossed a lit Molotov cocktail into a cop car. Images from the detention memo purport to show a masked Rahman clutching a Molotov cocktail made from a Bud Light bottle. Several cops saw the caper and cornered the pair nearby, according to the memo. During the arrest, officers observed in plain view several precursor items used to build a Molotov cocktail, including a lighter, the bottles, the toilet paper, and gasoline in the vicinity of the passenger seat, and a gasoline tank in the rear of the vehicle. They each face charges of causing damage by fire and explosives. You're looking at 20 years minimum, and they will be disbarred. These attorneys probably making $150,000, $180,000 a year each. Mattis, a graduate of Princeton University and the New York University School of Law, is an associate at corporate Manhattan firm Pryor Cashman Brooklyn Community Board 5 in East New York, lists Mattis as one of its members. Rahman is also registered as an attorney in New York State, who was admitted to the bar in June of 2019 after graduating from Fordham University School of Law. Both these people will probably they'll be probably close to 60 years old by the time they get out of prison. They knew their acts endangered the New York Police Department officers and protesters on the street, as well as their own futures, and the defendants were undeterred. It means they were not repentant. They were antagonistic, and they were proud of what they did. They will probably serve the entire 20 years. If any officer had been hurt, they'd be doing life or be subject to the death penalty. The reason this is important to know is that if you were hanging with these two, you were accessories. Accessory after the fact. It means if you're on the street in your town and somebody kicks the crap out of some store owner, or beats him over the head with a 2x4, hits him with a pipe or a hammer or a brick, and that person dies, you are an accessory to manslaughter. Be smart. Stay home. Get out of this. It's not going to go well for you. I'm trying to save your life. You may already be busted. They may already have your picture. They may already have your DNA. Some Coke you were drinking, or cap you were wearing, or shoes you were wearing, or glass you got cut on. They may already have you. You could get lucky. Don't let them use you as cannon fodder. A video taken Friday night by a witness captured a 27-year-old girl. Her name is Shader. And she was lighting a Molotov cocktail and throwing it at a police vehicle. And guess what? Bad for her. There were 4 cops in that vehicle. Of course, she threw like a girl. It did not explode. It just caught on fire, and all the officers escaped. The Molotov cocktails are a violent tool of individuals looking to inflict harm and damage the city. It's attempted murder. 4 counts. She's 27 years old. Her younger sister, Darian Shader, is just 21. What do you think their parents are thinking? My 27-year-old daughter and my 21-year-old daughter are going to go to prison, and they're not going to get out until they're 60. Also taken into custody after trying to intervene in the arrest. She's been charged with resisting arrest and obstruction of justice and will be prosecuted by the Brooklyn District Attorney. And she's an adult at 21. She don't have enough money to defend herself against this. A separate complaint filed in federal court charges a man and a woman, Collinford Mattis. Oh, I already read that one. Sorry about that. These defendants are just the ones that I can cover tonight. There are more. FBI Assistant Director in Charge William F. Sweeney added, and I got to share this quote with you. When you conduct a violent attack that breaks federal law, The FBI New York office, along with their NYPD and Department of Justice partners, will move with speed to hold you accountable. There's no getting out of this. Behavior like the attacks charged here puts the entire American community at risk. It puts protesters and first responders alike in danger, and we will simply not allow it to go unaddressed. Social media users, including the former NYPD Commissioner Bernard Carrick, who oversaw the city's response to the 9/11 terrorist attacks, they've alleged that Samantha Shader is a member of the militant left-wing anti-fascist group Antifa. I told you. They would scan her Facebook account, scan her Instagram and Snapchat accounts and Twitter accounts. She has pictures of herself in the Antifa garb after Antifa training meeting with other Antifa members. Her phone's been confiscated. All the Antifa members with whom she texted and she phone called and she shared pictures with, all of that is now part of federal evidence. This will spread so quickly, and I can just tell you it's not going to go well for any of these people. So, President Trump this week said that he was going to declare Antifa a terrorist organization. Professional attorneys are saying, and constitutional attorneys are saying, that's a lot of filter garb. It's a lot easier said than done because Antifa really isn't an organization. There aren't any heads. They don't have any bank accounts. There's no club membership. We don't really know who's a member, who's not a member. And Antifa really anti-fascist. It's just a political viewpoint. And you can't take a political viewpoint in America and call it terroristic. Wow. As far as we know, Antifa doesn't have any bank accounts, they say. It doesn't have any assets. Doesn't have any infrastructure. But that's not exactly true. Because the FBI has infiltrated this organization, and so has the NSA, and they know all their moves. They know where all their money is. They know where their money comes from and where it goes to. They know where it's banked. They know they're using bitcoins. They know they're using cell phones. And there's a couple laws here that they forgot to take into consideration. One is if you travel across state lines with the intent of doing violence, that's a federal crime. The other is if you use the mail system or if you use the email system to cross state lines with the intention of committing or inciting violence, it's a federal crime. If I come to you and I say, I'm going to kick your butt, I get in your face and I yell at you, that's assault. If I touch you, grab your shirt, throw you down, slap you, that's battery. If I use a club, a stick, a pair of brass knuckles, that's aggravated battery. That's even more serious. If I use a weapon like a knife or a gun, that's considered wanton endangerment because now I'm threatening your life. But if I say to you, you've really made me mad, I'm going to come to your house and I'm going to burn it to the ground. You know what that is? That's called terroristic threatening. 5 years. 5 years because you threatened a terroristic act against that person. If you cross state lines to do it, double it. It's 10 years. This is how Antifa will be taken down. When you are a terrorist organization, there's no legal process or meaning for what the president has said, but there are process parts to it. And they can be enforced. Let's see here. Attorney General Barr said in a statement, and I'm going to quote this, the violent instigation and carried out by Antifa and other similar groups in connection with the rioting is domestic terrorism, and it will be treated accordingly, close quote. Now, Barr's language isn't an official designation, but it could indicate the resources the Department of Justice and FBI are going to put into investigating a particular threat. And this is where it gets serious because the resources are the intelligence community. They're going to listen to your phone. They're going to use Stingray, and they're going to get your phone contacts, and they're going to surveil them. If you commit a violent act, you go smash windows with a brick. Oh, you think you're all covered, right? You got the black mask on. You got the black gloves on. You've listened to Alexandria Communist Cortez, and you've covered all your identifying tattoos. They can't tell who I am. I'm a member of the Black Bloc. Guess what? There's surveillance cameras on you. Somebody sees you throw that brick through that window, walk through, grab a pair of tennis shoes, and walk out. You're smiling, getting in your BMW, and you're going to drive away. You are followed from that point on the rest of your day until you lay your head down in your bed, and they know where you live, and they know when you got there, and they know it's you because they followed you all the way from where you perpetrated that crime. And guess when they did it? About a month after you did it. Yep. There's nobody sitting there monitoring that camera while you're doing it, but all that stuff is recorded. It's like one big giant TiVo with the NSA. And it's just like in Britain. In Britain, they watch, or in London anyway, they watch every single street corner, every single building, every corner of every building has a camera on it. And if there's a crime committed, yeah, you get away with the crime. You stab the person, you beat the person, you steal whatever it is you're going to steal, a car or whatever. And then all they do is they follow those cameras all the way back to your apartment. If it's a serious enough crime, like a bombing or a restaurant shooting or stuff like that, they're going to be kicking your door down in about 90 minutes. Because they will follow you all the way back. Yep, he turned that corner. Yep, he went in this building. Yep, oh, look at there. He took his jacket off, and now he's just got a shirt on. They're going to follow you all the way to your apartment, and they're going to get you and your mates. And that's it for you. CRS report said that while there's no domestic terrorist designation, you have to understand we are still in a state of emergency, a national state of emergency. All kinds of executive orders apply right now. The DOJ and the FBI have publicly named and discussed domestic terrorism threats such as animal rights extremism or anarchist extremism, without illuminating exactly how they arrive at these categories. They never give away their sources or their methods. Boris said, the court cases against these individuals rely on laws against sabotage, vandalism, harassment, but not domestic terrorism. The language about such threats can also indicate what resources and priority groups would receive from the DOJ. But here's the deal. Once these things go to court and this language like domestic terrorism gets entered into the legal record, guess what it becomes? Law. It becomes law through court precedent, and it's very hard to undo, especially when you have a dead cop, especially when you have a dead store owner who is beaten in public, in the middle of the street. Very hard to undo. McCord and Jason M. Blazakis, who's the director of Middlebury Institute for International Studies Center on Terrorism, Extremism, and Counterterrorism. This is what he wrote. It's a lawfare blog. And this was just February 27, 2019, so it's pretty current. He said this: designation of a domestic organization as a terrorist organization would raise serious concerns about infringing on First Amendment rights and cause legitimate fears that the designation tool could be used wrongly to target unpopular ideologies. And he is exactly right. This is dangerous, dangerous road to go down. That's why you don't see it happening like all of a sudden. Everything has to be done correctly. Everything has to be done rightly. Otherwise, you set up a precedent that allows law enforcement, maybe when we don't have a good president as the president of the United States, to use it against his political enemies. And my God, we've already seen the results of that, haven't we? Be serious, people. This is big deal stuff. In a May 30th tweet, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry, this is what he said. He was now confronting white supremacists, members of organized crime, and out-of-state instigators, and possibly even foreign actors to destroy and destabilize our city and our region. And you know what? It all turned out to be fake. It all turned out to be wrong. Now, what would happen if that became a court precedent? See? Dangerous. Mark Bray, a historian of Rutgers University and author of Antifa, the Anti-Fascist Handbook, he wrote in the Washington Post that he suggests or suspects some members of Antifa groups have been involved in the protest, but there aren't enough of them to lead nationwide destruction tactics. Antifa itself is not an overarching organization with a chain of command, as Trump and his allies have been suggesting. And he's absolutely wrong. Organizing for Action, Obama's group, is extremely well funded with multiple billions of dollars. It has over 52,000 professional activists nationwide, and I promise you they don't have any in Alaska or Rhode Island. I mean, they're all just concentrated in areas where they have strong Democrat presence so that they can create maximum mayhem. Now, keep in mind that this mayhem, this window breaking, fire setting, looting mayhem, it's not taking place in the suburbs. Oh, they've tried, but it doesn't get very far because the residents in those areas are saying, no, turn around and you head right back out the way you just came in. Nope, it's happening in the inner cities. It's happening in the minority communities where all these businesses over the last 3 years, they've prospered. They've prospered by grants, loans, regulations being moved out of the way, advocacy groups focusing by the federal government on these areas with special enterprise investments to make these areas revitalize. Old dilapidated buildings torn down, rebuilt as new buildings with new businesses in them, auto zones, nightclubs, hair salons, all kinds of places to revitalize the inner city so these people have someplace to shop, someplace to go and talk and meet, libraries, coffee shops, all the kind of things that every neighborhood enjoys. But they've never been able to prosper in the inner city because the Democrats have always held these inner cities to be their own private plantation with their own private slave voters. Well, all those areas have prospered in the last 3 years. And the Democrats, well, hell, they can't have that. So they send these groups in with bricks and pipes and bats and Molotov cocktails, and they say, hey, let's go after these minority businesses and let's burn them the hell out. Let's put them out of business. Let's make sure we take these neighborhoods right back where they were when our President Barack Obama was president. That was his dream for the inner city. And that's what they've been doing. That's what you've been seeing happen. So, by the way, thank you, Darren. Darren says, your analysis is spot on. I love your books. Wish I could do more. Thanks for the $20. I super appreciate it. Festus says, common law is founded by the holdings of the Supreme Court, state or national. Yes, it's true. And although we have seen a lot of activism from the bench, I call it the reign of the judges. The last few years, what's happened is President Trump has put about 197 federal judges on the court. They'll serve for life, and this will fundamentally change the court system for a generation. We still have some courts to go. We'd like to see the Ninth Circuit. We'd like to see some of these older, crazy activist judges get off the bench and replace them with conservatives that are more American in their ideals. And we will, and we'll see one or possibly two more Supreme Court justices as well. Once the judicial branch falls into what we call, the American realm, less activists, less writing law from the bench, you're going to see stabilization in the rule of law. And stabilization in the rule of law is what is going to save the republic. And believe me, it's not just Americans looking for this. The whole world is looking for this. Because if America is taken down, if the republic is destroyed by the Democrats, freedom and liberty will never show its face on the earth again. Hong Kong will be lost. Australia will be lost. New Zealand will be lost. Venezuela will be its final nail in the coffin. Everything that Maduro is doing, by the way, you've seen the U.S. Navy go down there and blockade that whole area so that China can't move assets into South America and use them against us. There are lots and lots of things, big level things moving right now because these are big level offensive moves that are being taken against America. Lots going on. Stay tuned to this program, America Free Radio, every Wednesday, every Sunday at 8 p.m. I'm Brooks Agnew, your host, saying peace, Earth Explorers. See you next week right here.